Do you want to start the recording? Thank you, sir. Thanks everybody for joining. Wanted to introduce Nuventive. Nuventive's been doing some really cool analytics with Microsoft. They're an approved Microsoft partner and have been working across SUNY and other higher education institutions to provide some really awesome analytics tools. Wanted to introduce you all to John Miller and Stacy from Nuventive, and they're going to be walking you through this deck. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat window, and we can go from there. We are recording this, so if there's anything, any reason anybody doesn't want to be part of the recorded conversation, just let us know. Thank you. John, go ahead. Or Stacy, if you'd like to get started.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe John's mic isn't working. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Stacy. Oh.
Sorry about that. Logistically, Josh, can people ask verbal questions or they need to ask questions in the panel?
Right now we have people muted, so they ask questions in the panel.
Okay. Thank you.
We can open it up in the end if you'd like to.
Yeah, we can do that as well. Okay. Nice. Thanks, everybody, for coming up and joining and hearing about Nuventive. We've been longtime partners of Microsoft. We've won a couple Partner of the Year's award in higher ed and some Innovation Award this year, which was exciting. So we're going to kind of go through a very quick presentation to position us, and then we'll get right into the software and show you how we help institutions unite around consistent data and actually use that data and what actions they're taking to drive improvement and student success and those types of things. So with that, Stacy, I'll let you go through the quick presentation, and we'll get into the software.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, John. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. So the improvement platform, and when we're talking about the improvement platform, what we're really talking about is one place for all of your planning needs. So we can integrate all of your planning processes or improvement processes in one place. So think about strategic plans, equity and diversity plans, SUNY Excels, middle states goals, uniting your institution around all of these different plans. It's flexible, so it scales to your size and adapts to your processes. So templates and forms that you're familiar with using, we can implement those into the software. What also is exciting is that we can bring in information or data, tie it to your goals and objectives so that people are seeing information in context, right? We know that you have lots of different information, lots of reports, but now we can present them to people in context. So they can say, you know, one of our goals was to improve retention, and right next to that, we can see our retention information. So all of your plans and the ability to tie data to those, and then most importantly, you can report those results. And we're using those analytics to report those results. You know, oftentimes when we're talking about planning, it's very narrative in focus. And this way you can get some very nice high-level dashboards for leadership to see where you are within all of these plans and what's working. So when we're talking about the different plans, we're talking about all levels of the institution. So you may have department or learning plans, institutional plans that kind of cross the all of those departments, program review, yearly, operational plans, and up to and including your strategic plan. So think about all of the plans that you're managing at your institution and a way to be able to link those that make sense for your reporting needs. So one place for all of those plans, and then on top of that, we know that oftentimes when people are doing this kind of planning, they're also looking at data or information, right? And this could be coming from student success metrics, perhaps, accountability metrics, surveys, program review reports. So in the course of all of this planning, you know, when you're evaluating your programs or you're looking at retention and you have enrollment plans or retention plans, oftentimes we need to be able to look at data. So we can bring in all of this information and tie it to those goals and objectives. So people are now seeing within their plans, their goals and objectives, the information that they need to make decisions. So now they can make those data-informed decisions. But most importantly, so it's nice to have all of that information in one place, but most importantly, you want an area where you can allow them to take action. So here's the data that we need. tied to our goals and objectives. And now here's a place where we can say, here's what we're doing to move forward. This is our plan of action moving forward. And then we can report all of these results up and across your institution so that you can see the how effective some of those actions are. What's working, what's not working, and so on. So when we pop into the presentation, I'm going to show you this in an example of a strategic plan. So how can we solve the two challenges that people face whenever they're doing this kind of institutional planning? So when we're talking about strategic plan, oftentimes there are two real challenges. The first is you have these plans and you have lots of people involved in these plans, and what's going on? You know, are we doing all of the things that we said we were going to do? Are we completing those actions, those objectives, those initiatives? And then, is it working? So we're doing all of this stuff. Now we want to know, is it working? So there are two real challenges. So we can implement we'll import your strategic plan into our system or any of your improvement processes initiatives. And you'll see kind of a generic example of a strategic plan today. And then there are, of course, layers to these plans, right? So we'll see one of our goals is student success. We have an objective to increase retention and completion. And then we have actions that are tied to those, so things that people are responsible for completing. And then how do we manage all of this? How do we know what's going on in each of these areas? Are we completing these actions? And then most importantly, are the things that we're doing helping us to improve in the areas that we care about? So I'm going to pop into the software and take a look at how all of this comes together. Okay, so this is the landing page, and as you can see, we leverage Office 365 and SharePoint, which is kind of nice for institutions who utilize this platform, right? It's one place for all of your planning needs, and we can also take advantage of some of the really great workflow that's embedded into SharePoint. So you see here that I've got some examples of all of these different plans. This would be specific to your institution and your plans, and you would align them in ways that make sense for your reporting needs. But for any of these plans, someone on the cabinet, maybe in the committee, leadership role wants to know, what are we doing? Are we making progress towards those goals? And then most importantly, is it in fact working? So let's pop into the strategic plan and see how this looks. Now you're going to see, again, those familiar goals that you saw within the presentation. So we've got 4 goals here within our strategic plan. Now, oftentimes, whenever it comes to this kind of planning, there may be a person or a committee that's responsible for each of these goals, right? So when they get together, they want to see very high level, are we completing the things that we said we were going to complete? So for each of these goals, you can see analytics around those. So all of the information that's in the plan, we import that into our improved platform. And then we utilize Power BI to create some really great analytics reports for people so that you can see for each of your goals, are we in fact improving? Where are we in that process? What actions have we completed, and then what actions have not been completed? So oftentimes, like I said, this is something that's narrative in focus, but being able to pull this information into Power BI really allows us to give people some really nice reports so they can see overall, where are we, you know, each quarter, are we improving, are we completing those actions? So any of the information that we're putting into your plan, we can provide you with these kind of dashboards. So maybe perhaps during your committee meeting, you say, okay, well, here are all of the things that we've completed in order to improve our retention rates. And here are the actions that have not been completed. So now I want to drill down a little further and say, you know, well, why have those actions not been completed? So I can drill down a little further and I can see all of the updates. Now, something nice that you won't see today, but something that's really nice about all of these updates is there are lots of people who are providing you these updates, right? You've got department chairs and deans that are going to be assigned different areas, and you need updates from them. And what's nice is they don't have to look any further than their own email. We send them an email, they get automatic reminders to give us those updates. They click on a link in their email and fill out a form, and in that form they tell us what that update is. So for that 1.3.1, you know, developing the capability to dynamically add sections, that was an action that we hadn't completed. Why is that? Here's where I can see the update. So IT encountered an issue merging the two systems, and it's going to require more resources. And this is kind of the part where I always apologize and say, hi, you know, I'm sorry if you are on the line and you are in IT. We just tend to always blame you, right? So But here's the place where we can see why those actions have not been completed, and maybe we need to provide more resources to areas, but a way for us to clearly see what's going on within the plan. So that's often the first challenge, right? There are a lot of people involved. Where are we within these plans? Are we completing all of the objectives? Managing to that strategic plan. So taking it from being this plan that's sitting in a binder on a shelf to actually managing to it and tracking the progress towards completion. So this is the first challenge, just managing that plan. And then the second piece to that is, okay, we've done all of these things to increase retention and completion rates. Now we want to know, is it working? So on top of our improvement planning process, we also have something that we call impact. And this is where we allow you to bring in data from a variety of sources, and they can land in one place. So now you can see the impact of the actions that you're taking above. So is this in fact working? Now here's where you can bring in your key metrics. So think about any of your plans. We were just at the Middle States Conference last week, and we heard people talking a lot about their equity, diversity, and inclusion plans. So you would decide what key metrics you want aligned to those goals. In our case, we're talking about the strategic plan. So we want things like retention and graduation rates, but maybe perhaps for your equity and diversity plans, you want to look at employment profiles. You would decide what information you want to bring into this window, and we can surface it right here. So this is an example of a Power BI report. This is an example of a Tableau report. And next to that, we have an example of a simple PDF. So whatever information you want to make available to folks, you can bring it into this window, and they can see that side by side in context to their goals, of course. So this is an example. So all of the different sources land in this window. The other key to this is whatever source you're using, whatever kind of filtering capabilities or however you interact with this report, you have those same capabilities right here. So in this case, we're utilizing Power BI, but we can drill and interact with this report to really maybe perhaps find a specific cohort of students that we want to focus on. So now I know that we've been completing things within our strategic plan, and now I see, okay, is that in fact working? Now I have the data so that I can make decisions moving forward, or we as a committee can make decisions moving forward to say, what do we need to do next in order to improve our retention rates, our graduation rates? So any information in the context of your goals can land here, and you can interact with those reports just as you would if you were accessing them from their source. The other nice thing about this is retention. Retention is something that everyone owns oftentimes at an institution. So what you can do now is you can push this information down to the right individuals. So we're looking at this from an institutional level, but you may say, it's important for our departments to look at this and decide what action steps they need to take moving forward in their own plans to improve retention, or maybe the colleges or the divisions. So what we can do is we can pass this or push this down to the right level. So let's say, for example, we want our departments to also be focused on retention and putting actions in place in their own plans to improve. So what we can do is present them this information. So when the Department of Psychology, for example, logs in, they're not going to see the entire retention rates for the institution. They're going to see their own, right? So we can push this down so that the people who need to see this information can take actions. They make small improvements, whereby improving for the entire institution. So here now at this department, I can see what our rates are. I can interact with this report. Most importantly, though, I can see what we've been working on over time to be able to improve our retention rates. So over here is my narrative or my analysis, right? So I can say, here's what we found in 2011. Our retention rates fell again in 2012. We found an at-risk cohort that we needed to focus on, and this was our strategy for improving. Here were the resources that we required in order to complete that, and here's the data that we were looking at the time whenever we made those decisions. And this is the part that people really get excited about, right? They say, if you asked me what the Department of Psychology did 4 years ago in order to change, the course of their retention rates, I'd be hard-pressed to find find that information, let alone find the data that they were looking at whenever they made those decisions. So now, as a department, I can see what we've done and how we've been able to improve over time. And did it work? Yeah, as a matter of fact, it did. Our retention rates have rebounded significantly, and this was our new course of action and the budgets that we were going to require in order to complete this new strategy. So each area is able to see their own information in the context of their goals, and then whenever they're ready, they can decide, okay, next, here's our analysis of the information. This is all a configurable area over here. What questions do you want to ask them around the information that's being presented? We kind of keep this pretty simple. Here's the analysis of the information. Here's what we're going to do moving forward, and this is the resources that we require in order to do that. And then you can use the camera to take a snapshot of the data so that you preserve all of that with your analysis. So being able to help you with those two challenges when it comes to planning. One, what are we doing? Are we doing the things in the plan that we said we wanted to accomplish? And then two, is that working for us? And if not, what changes are we going to make to our plans in order to improve in these areas that we care about? And then this can all, roll up. So if you were perhaps on a committee that was looking at an entire plan, you would want to be able to see all of the information, right? You would want to be able to see where are we in all of those goals, what actions have been completed, which ones haven't been completed, why is that? So in this area, you would be able to see a dashboard for all of those goals and really be able to drill down. The other thing that's nice for a committee, you can have some of those narrative reports, but you can see what information are people looking at. In this case, this particular area was looking at classroom utilization. So they were looking at data coming from Ad Astra and then what strategies they were making in order to improve. Now, all of this planning information, like I said, we're pulling into Power BI so that we can get some really great analytics reports. So a lot of times people will say, well, how does this is great. This is great that we're looking at this from the strategic planning level, but we have all kinds of plans, right? We're in Achieving the Dream School. We have an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan. We have, our president has her own set of goals and objectives that we want to all be aligned to. So we've got some examples of those kinds of reports as well, but really being able to unite the institution around consistent information, being able to track progress towards your goals and objectives, and then see, most importantly, the impact of those actions. So giving people the information they need so that they can make decisions to improve, and then all of that rolling up. So as an example here, we can see this is a report that's showing us everything that's aligned to our middle state standards, right? So we have the first standard of mission and goals. We have we can pull this up. So we've got divisions. The central office is aligned to the standards. The divisions are aligned to those. And we can drill down a little further and say, well, what are the goals and objectives that each of these areas are working on to improve? We can pull those actions and what were the resource requests? What was, did that work out? So you're able to see any of the information. We align those plans in ways that make sense for your reporting, so you can pull these kinds of reports and say, well, here's everything we're working on in and around our middle state standards. Well, what about our Achieving the Dream goals? Well, here's everything that people are working on around the Achieving the Dream goals, around the SUNY Excels. All of that information can be pulled into one place. So that is an overview of the platform and how we're allowing you to bring in all of your plans, track progress towards those goals, and then most importantly, tie data to those plans so that you can make decisions based on that. And then we're using, like I said, we're leveraging Power BI to bring in all of this planning information to provide you with these visual analytics reports so that you can see how all of your plans are aligned, request any information around your plan. I'll pause there, see if there are any questions. John has been awful quiet. He likes to interrupt me, so I'm sure I forgot a couple things that he wants me to mention. So let me pause there and see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Stacy. Great information so far. If you guys have any questions, there's a little I am button on the bottom left. You can feel free to drop any questions in that box. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Now, Stacey, I think you hit all the key points, and I think, coming out of the Middle States Accreditation Conference, there was a lot of interest in strategic plan management and diversity and inclusion. You mentioned all that, but also the use of data and taking action on that data was really what all the conversations revolved around. And we were showing a lot of people around how easy Power BI is to use, and if you know Excel, you can really leverage that pretty quickly, and the price point's incredible. So I think you hit all the key points.
Yeah, and we were talking about the budget requests. So here's an example where you could pull all of those requests in. You would be able to filter, by the departments, what kind of request was it, who was the one that offered those requests. These can all roll up so you can see the total cost, those kinds of things. So a lot of times institutions say, we don't want each of our areas to just put in a resource request and the cost of it. What we want is for them to put in their resource request, and then we want that to go to a person or a committee or a department that's going to kind of see what those costs are, right? So all of our equipment requests are going to a specific area. Our human resource requests are going there. So you've got analytics around all of those different types of budget requests that are coming in. So a way for you to view those in ways that make sense. Sometimes we even have people who will rank those requests, managers rank those requests. So you've got a lot of flexibility in those kinds of areas. And the other thing that I'll show you is, we're talking about this from the strategic planning level, but, also oftentimes in academic areas, they also want to know, well, where are we in these institutional learning outcomes, right? High level, are our students advancing in the areas that we care about with, critical thinking, communication? So here's an example of a report where we're pulling all of this information in around our academic plans, and now we can look across the institution and say, for each of our programs, we can filter by those programs and say, where are we in communication? How many students have we assessed? How many of them have been successful? Are we, is there an area that we can focus? What about the types of courses, the delivery of our courses? Are we more successful in online courses or face-to-face courses? All of that kind of information can be available, and then you can push this down to those units, right? So just like you saw within the retention, now we say, okay, well, here's the success, in your institutional learning outcomes or your general education, and now we'll give the data to the programs. When the programs come in, they're going to see, again, their own units. They could filter by their courses. What kinds of things can we do as a unit to improve in our institutional learning outcomes? So again, a way to be able to track progress towards completion of your plans, but then most importantly, provide that data to units so that they can use this information to inform their own planning efforts and to improve in those areas. So lots of different kinds of plans, the ability to kind of view those plans in a really nice, easy way, and then moving forward, using the information to inform what we're doing next, so that we're constantly improving, looking at information, and using that to help us make decisions.
Yeah, Stacey, the other thing I wanted to say is the diversity inclusion plans that we're developing with one of the SUNY system schools is has got a lot of interest across the campus, and the person we're working with is really a thought leader and wants to affect change at the institution around these equity and diversity and inclusion from not only students but faculty, and then working with the businesses around that institution. So a lot of focus on that. The other thing you hit on was the budget, and every institution in the Northeast, whether it be public or private, is some of them are hitting $70,000 and more on tuition, and so I think budgets are really being scrutinized. I think there's a lot more accountability on how money is being spent, I know that CFOs and Vice President of Finance have to report to middle states every year on financial viability of the institutions. I think also one thing you did mention was that our platform, there's a lot of interest at the Board of Trustees on accessing data and information, and we can give Board of Trustees view-only data access and when they want to look at it and be able to get more information if they want. So I think this platform is really going to be leveraged from the top to the bottom of the institution. Are there any questions, Josh, coming in?
No, not that I see at this point, John. Do you guys want to take a second and sort of speak to exactly what you're doing with some of the SUNY schools? So maybe pull out some of the solutions you developed with some of those customers, or can you not share any of those at this point?
No, I think we hit on some of them. I think Stacy, you mentioned SUNY Suffolk, where we're doing SUNY Excels, we're doing Achieving the Dream, the President's goals and objectives. So they're leveraging where they can bring the information in here and collect it in an organized fashion versus trying to, I think that the vice president down there said it took him 5 or 6 weeks to do SUNY Excels the first time, chasing people for information. And once he set up a unit in our system here and gave people access and assignments to participate, then the collection of that information was much, much easier, and people knew when they had to get it done and stuff like that. So the same thing is happening with his effort around Achieving the Dream. So upstate, we're working with Brockport to do the equity and diversity inclusion effort, and that stretches across the entire institution as well. So a lot of things going on. We're working with Erie Community College is rolling out this platform as we speak, and that's going to be fully implemented sometime next year, and across the whole institution, managing their strategic plan, academic outcomes, administrative operations, and things like that. So really, those are the types of things we're seeing happen. It's really leadership, like the provost, understanding which departments are having good retention rates, who's losing students, what actions are people taking, facilities. I think, Stacy, you did touch on fiscal responsibilities and facilities and those types of departments. And so it really does cross all aspects of the institution. Does that make sense, Josh? Is that what you were looking for, more of those types of plans?
No, that's perfect. So realistically, Nuventive has a solution that you can easily implement at your school, leveraging the Power BI as an analytics tool to specifically within SUNY meet the needs of SUNY Excels, which is a great tool because other schools have that need as well. Additionally, you can look at different ways that you can leverage the analytics to impact the business at your school. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, yes, it is. And I think where there's an identified change or a need or a challenge to be met, we can support those efforts, and leveraging data to really, identify how we're going to measure it, and did it work. And that's a big thing that I don't think is. I think it's got a solid ROI. We've come in and I think if we can impact budgets, in the way that we identify what's working and what isn't working, and you don't keep funding the things that aren't working. If you're trying to do a retention effort and improving retention, and you make an effort, if it doesn't work, then don't keep doing it. Move on to some other strategy or action, and give that budget to somebody else that has a different idea on how to impact it. So, identifying students at risk early is another one. That helps retention rates. So are they involved in activities on campus? all of this can be collected in here. And the other thing that I don't know if we mentioned here, but a lot of committee work and task force activities get put into the system, and people can go in and enter and participate that way as well. And then people can go back and run reports on how the committee's working on it and things like that. So it gives people a place to attach the goals and objectives of the committee. If you divide and conquer, certain groups have certain responsibilities. They come bring it in here, and then you assemble a report. It's much like what happens with Middle States accreditation, where a lot of people are participating on the 7 standards, and then they put it into the system, and you assemble the final report. And committee work and task force do similar actions. They just don't last over 8 years. They last over a year or two.
Right. I think what I would also, just one kind of last thing to add is that what we found, especially for those SUNY schools, what they like is that it's really simple for all of these units. It's really simple for them to manage their plans. And most importantly, so SUNY Excels came along. That's something new that we need to align to. We're already in this particular unit of academic affairs. They have goals, right? They're working on goals that can easily align to other areas of the institution. So they can easily map those. They're entering all of this information one time, but it can support multiple improvement initiatives at your institution. So I think that's something that they really like. It's a simple email for them to give an update about where they are within their plans, but it also comes back around. So we heard from a lot of our institutions before that, we're doing this work and we send these plans and then we never hear anything from it, right? We did all of this stuff, we put all of this together, and then we never hear anything back. And here, because it's all together, because it's all in one place, because it's aligned, we can say, well, now we understand, these units understand that this budget request has to be tied to one of these goals or objectives, and here's why. And then, once we do see that this is in fact improving, then, we get those resource requests, we get the stuff that we need so that we can continue to improve, because it's all together. We see how we're affecting change in our own unit. We can see progress towards our own goals, but we can also see how we're effectively driving improvement at the throughout the institution. So it's no longer we put these reports together and they go into an abyss somewhere and we never hear about what happened with them, right? Was it effective? Is what we're doing working? And now there's a way to say, like, hey, let's share these successes. This particular division did some really great work, and now we can share this with other folks. And so it gets them kind of excited about those efforts. And they also feel like they're really making an impact.
Great, thank you. That's incredible information. Going to leave it open for one more second for anybody if they have any questions. Is there any kind of summary that you all wanted to say at the end of this, or is this good information? And if customers are interested, they could reach out to you, John, or Stacy directly.
Yeah, they can reach out to me, and if they have any other questions. But hopefully. They got a sense of the breadth of the solution, and then how we're leveraging a lot of the Microsoft infrastructure, like review and approval of plans. Schools are starting to do a lot more about that, and things like that. So the Power BI has been fantastic for us. We've introduced it to not only New York State, but I have New England region as well, and there's just a lot of interest in data now, and there's no easier tool than Power BI, and it's been a fantastic help for us to go summary reports, as Stacy showed people. So, really, if the institution has to have an impact and make a change, we'd love to hear from you.
Sounds good, John. Stacy, thank you for your time. We hope we get to support a number of customers with these analytics solutions. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.